My father kicked me out, for being a single mom, at 18, until my baby daddy arrived in his convoy. Please, before I proceed, kindly hit the subscribe button, like, and share this video with your loved ones. Thank you so much. My name is General Adams. I'm 18 years old, and my father is Kevin Adams. My mother is Elizabeth Adams. And yeah, if that name rings a bell, it's probably because you've seen it on a building, or read it in business magazines. My father runs one of the biggest private oil companies in the country. So, growing up, it was different. We lived in this massive, sprawling mansion that always felt more like a museum than a home. We had housekeepers, drivers, chefs, you name it. To everyone on the outside, I was the girl who had everything. The oil heiress. And don't get me wrong, I know how incredibly privileged that sounds. I never had to worry about money, not for a second. But what I did have to worry about was, well, everything else. Reputation. Appearances. What will people say? That was basically the family motto. My life was planned out for me, from the schools I attended to the friends I was allowed to have. It was like living in a beautiful, golden cage. Let me tell you a little bit about my parents. My father, Mr. Kevin Adams, is a brilliant businessman. He's sharp, he's powerful, and he's respected. But at home, he was distant. He was a man of few words, and his approval was the one thing I always craved but could never seem to get. His world was his company, his legacy. Then there's my mother, Elizabeth Adams. She's the perfect socialite. Beautiful, elegant, and she runs our household with an iron fist. Her entire world revolves around status, around class. Who you were, where you came from, what your family name was, that's all that mattered to her. She was grooming me to be just like her, to marry into another wealthy, powerful family, to merge legacies, to continue the dynasty. Love. That was a nice idea, but it was secondary. Alliance, suitability, that was the real goal. They weren't bad people, you guys, I want to make that clear. They had their priorities, and those priorities had been drilled into them for generations. And I was supposed to be their perfect, obedient daughter. For 18 years, I tried to be. I really did. So, after I finished my secondary school, there was this youth program, kind of like an internship or a youth service corps thing, and I managed to convince my parents to let me do it in New York. It was a huge deal. They were hesitant. My mom wanted me to go to some finishing school in Switzerland, but I think my dad saw it as a good, networking opportunity. For me, it was just one thing, freedom. For the first time in my life, there was no driver. No chaperone. No one watching my every move. I was just Jen, in the middle of the biggest, busiest, most amazing city in the world. I had this tiny little apartment, well, tiny by my family's standards, and I was just breathing. I was taking the subway, grabbing dollar slice pizza, walking through Central Park with my headphones in. I felt so alive, so normal. I was finally getting to discover who I was, not who Jen Adams, the oil heiress, was supposed to be. My father kicked me out, for being a single mom, at 18, until my baby daddy arrived in his convoy. Please, before I proceed, kindly hit the subscribe button, like, and share this video with your loved ones. Thank you so much. My name is General Adams. I'm 18 years old, and my father is Kevin Adams. My mother is Elizabeth Adams. And yeah, if that name rings a bell, it's probably because you've seen it on a building, or read it in business magazines. My father runs one of the biggest private oil companies in the country. So, growing up, it was different. We lived in this massive, sprawling mansion that always felt more like a museum than a home. We had housekeepers, drivers, chefs, you name it. To everyone on the outside, I was the girl who had everything. The oil heiress. And don't get me wrong, I know how incredibly privileged that sounds. I never had to worry about money, not for a second. But what I did have to worry about was, well, everything else. Reputation. Appearances. What will people say? That was basically the family motto. My life was planned out for me, from the schools I attended to the friends I was allowed to have. It was like living in a beautiful, golden cage. Let me tell you a little bit about my parents. My father, Mr. Kevin Adams, is a brilliant businessman. He's sharp, he's powerful, and he's respected. But at home, he was distant. He was a man of few words, and his approval was the one thing I always craved but could never seem to get. His world was his company, his legacy. Then there's my mother, Elizabeth Adams. She's the perfect socialite. Beautiful, elegant, and she runs our household with an iron fist. Her entire world revolves around status, around class. Who you were, where you came from, what your family name was, that's all that mattered to her. She was grooming me to be just like her, to marry into another wealthy, powerful family, to merge legacies, to continue the dynasty. Love. That was a nice idea, but it was secondary. Alliance, suitability, that was the real goal. They weren't bad people, you guys, I want to make that clear. They had their priorities, and those priorities had been drilled into them for generations. And I was supposed to be their perfect, obedient daughter. For 18 years, I tried to be. I really did. So, after I finished my secondary school, there was this youth program, kind of like an internship or a youth service corps thing, and I managed to convince my parents to let me do it in New York. It was a huge deal. They were hesitant. My mom wanted me to go to some finishing school in Switzerland, but I think my dad saw it as a good, networking opportunity. For me, it was just one thing: freedom. For the first time in my life, there was no driver. No chaperone. No one watching my every move. I was just Jen, in the middle of the biggest, busiest, most amazing city in the world. I had this tiny little apartment, well, tiny by my family's standards, and I was just breathing. I was taking the subway, grabbing dollar slice pizza, walking through Central Park with my headphones in. I felt so alive, so normal. I was finally getting to discover who I was, not who Jen Adams, the oil heiress, was supposed to be. And that's when I met him. Victor. It's so funny, it wasn't at some fancy gala or a charity ball my parents would have approved of. It was in a crowded, noisy coffee shop near my apartment. I was trying to juggle my laptop, my bag, and a way too hot latte, and I just fumbled. The entire thing went flying. And this guy, who was sitting at a nearby table working on his own laptop, just jumped up. He didn't laugh, he didn't roll his eyes. He just said, "Oh, that's a nightmare. Are you okay?" He helped me clean everything up, bought me a new coffee, and just smiled. And you guys, his smile. It was the warmest, most genuine smile I had ever seen. He wasn't wearing a designer suit. He didn't ask me what my father did. We just started talking. His name was Victor, and he was in New York trying to get his tech startup off the ground. He was so smart, so passionate, and so real. We started seeing each other. And when I say, seeing each other, I mean we went for walks. We sat in the park and he'd tell me about his ideas for his app. We'd go to cheap, amazing food trucks. It was so different from the dates I'd been on back home, which were basically interviews over a 5-course meal. With Victor, I could be 100% myself. I could be goofy, I could be scared, I could talk about my crazy dreams that had nothing to do with oil or society. And he listened. He actually listened. He told me about his life, too. He came from a very, very humble background. His family had nothing. He'd put himself through school on scholarships and was working 2 jobs to fund his dream. He had this incredible drive, this belief that he could build something from scratch. I'd never met anyone like him. And I fell for him. Hard. I was completely, totally, head over heels in love. Of course, in the back of my mind, the clock was ticking. I knew my program would end. I knew I'd have to go home. And I knew what my family would think of Victor. I tried to push it down, to just enjoy the moment, but the fear was always there. Victor didn't have a name. He didn't have a trust fund. He had something better. He had character, and brilliance, and a heart of gold, but I knew my parents wouldn't see that. All they would see was poor. They would see, not our class. I would try to bring it up vaguely, and he'd just laugh. He was so optimistic. It'll be fine, Jen, he'd say. They'll love you, and you love me. We'll make them see. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But I knew my mother. I knew my family. And I was terrified. When my program ended, I went back home. And the golden cage felt smaller than ever. New York had changed me. Victor had changed me. I couldn't just go back to being the perfect, plastic doll. I was on the phone with Victor every night, whispering in my room, hiding my smile. My mom, of course, noticed. She's not a detective, but she's a mother. She cornered me one afternoon in the library. Genevieve, she always used my full name when she was serious. You've been distracted since you got back. And you're always on that phone. Is there a young man? I tried to be casual. I tried to brush it off. But she kept pushing. Who is he, Jen? Is it the Clarkson boy? I heard he was in New York. And I couldn't lie. Not really. So I told her. I said, his name is Victor. And he's amazing, Mom. He's smart, and kind, and he makes me so happy. You guys, the temperature in that room dropped 20 degrees. Her smile just froze. It was like a mask. Victor, she said, testing the name. Victor, what? What's his family name? And there it was. The question. I took a deep breath. He's just Victor, Mom. He's building his own name. His family, they're not wealthy. I tried to say it with pride, but my voice was shaking. My mother stood up and walked to the window. She was quiet for a full minute. Then she turned around, and her eyes were like ice. Genevieve, we are not going to do this. You are not going to throw your life away on some nobody. You are an Adams. You will date and you will marry within your class. This, Victor, is a distraction. A phase. You will end it. Immediately. I just stared at her. Mom, you don't even know him. I love him. And she laughed. A cold, short laugh. Love. Don't be ridiculous. You're 18. You don't know what love is. What you're feeling is a little rebellion. It's time to grow up and get serious about your future. You will not see him again." I was heartbroken. I cried for days. I was still talking to Victor, but I was so scared. And then, everything got 100 times more complicated. It started with me feeling sick. I just felt off. Tired. A little nauseous. I thought maybe I had the flu, or it was just the stress of fighting with my mom. But then, one morning, I woke up and I knew. It was this cold, drenching, terrifying feeling. I secretly went to a pharmacy, miles away from our neighborhood, and bought a test. I waited until my parents were out at some charity dinner. I locked myself in my marble and gold bathroom, my hands shaking so badly I could barely open the box. I took the test and set it on the counter, just like in the movies. I told myself I wouldn't look for 3 minutes. I think I looked after 30 seconds. And there it was. Plain as day. Positive. I sank to the floor. I wasn't Jen Adams. I wasn't the oil heiress. I was 18, I was in love with a man my family hated, and I was pregnant. I don't know how long I sat on that bathroom floor, just numb. I felt like my life was over. What was I going to do? I called Victor, and he was amazing. He was scared, I could hear it, but his first words were, "Are you okay? Jen, are you okay? We're okay. We will figure this out. I'm with you. I love you." Hearing his voice, it gave me a tiny bit of strength. But I knew I couldn't hide it. Not forever. So, that night, I waited for my parents to come home. I found them in my father's study. They were having a nightcap, talking about the dinner. I walked in, and my mom immediately said, "Jen, you look pale. Are you ill?" And I burst into tears. I couldn't hold it in. I just sobbed, I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was the loudest sound I've ever heard. My father stared. He put his glass down, very slowly. My mother, though, her face went through 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, confusion, and then, pure, cold rage. "What did you say?" she whispered. I said it again. "I'm pregnant. It's Victor's." My father finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but it was terrifying. "Genevieve, you're lying." "I'm not," I whispered, holding up the test I'd brought with me. My mother snatched it. She looked at it, and then she looked at me, and I'd never seen her look at me with so much disgust. "You will get rid of it," she said. It wasn't a question. It was a command. "You will have an operation. And you will never, ever speak to that boy again. We will fix this. No one ever has to know." I was horrified. "No. Mom, no. I won't. It's our baby." And that's when she snapped. "Then you will leave," she screamed. "If you will not fix this, if you are going to bring this shame on our family, you will not do it under my roof. You will leave this house, or you will get rid of that thing." I just cried. I begged her, I begged my dad. "Please, Daddy, please." He wouldn't even look at me. A few days passed. It was like living in a war zone. No one spoke to me. The staff was ordered not to engage with me. I was a ghost in my own home. I kept begging my parents, trying to talk to them, but they treated me like I didn't exist. My mom was making calls, trying to book an appointment for me. Then, the annual Addams Family Foundation ball was happening. It was this huge, mandatory event. A family reunion, of sorts, with all our extended family, business partners, the press, everyone. My mom told me I was not to attend. I was to stay in my room. But I couldn't. I had to make one last appeal. I thought, maybe in public, in front of the family, they wouldn't be so cruel. Maybe my dad would soften. How wrong I was. I got dressed. I wasn't showing yet, but I felt different. I put on a simple dress and I went downstairs. The party was in full swing. Hundreds of people, champagne, a string quartet. Everyone was laughing, dressed in designer clothes, smiling for the cameras. It was the biggest, fakest room I'd ever been in. I found my father holding court by the grand piano, talking to some investors. I walked up to him. "Dad," I said. The music kind of faded. People turned. He looked at me, and his face was thunderous. "Genevieve, I told your mother you were to stay in your room." His voice was low and menacing. "Dad, please," I whispered, tears welling up. "Please, just, let's talk. Don't make me do this." And he saw the defiance in my eyes. He saw that I wasn't going to get rid of it. And in front of everyone, his brothers, his partners, my aunts and uncles, he just lost it. "You," he said, pointing his finger at me. "You are a disgrace. You stand here, in my house, after what you've done." The whole party went silent. You could hear a pin drop. "You were 18 years old," he boomed, his voice echoing. "A child. And you think you can bring this shame into my family? You think you can be a single mother at 18 and still be an Addams? You have made your choice." My mom was just watching, her face pale. I was shaking, tears streaming down my face. "No. Please," I begged. "You've made your choice," he repeated. "If you will not do as your mother and I have instructed, then you are no longer my daughter." "I'm not even kidding, you guys," he said that. "You are no longer my daughter. Get out of my house." Just like that. In front of everyone. All our relatives, just staring. Some looked shocked, some looked smug. No one said a word to defend me. He kicked me out. His pregnant, 18-year-old daughter. I ran up the stairs, grabbed my purse, my laptop, and just a few clothes. I stuffed them into a backpack. I walked back down those stairs, right through the middle of the party. It was the longest, most humiliating walk of my life. I walked out the front door, into the hot afternoon, with nothing but a backpack and a broken heart. I had nowhere to go. I called Victor. I was crying so hard I could barely speak. He kicked me out, Victor. He kicked me out. Victor was instantly calm. "Where are you? Jen, tell me where you are. I'm coming to get you." But I couldn't wait. I just got in a cab and gave him the address to Victor's tiny apartment. It was in a walk-up building, on the other side of town. The poor side. The side my parents warned me about. When I got there, I just collapsed at his door. He opened it and his face, he just saw me, with my bag, and my tear-stained face, and he didn't say a word. He just pulled me inside, held me for, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. He just held me while I cried. He stroked my hair and just kept whispering, "It's okay. I've got you. You're safe. We're safe." His apartment was one room. A tiny kitchen, a mattress on the floor. It was nothing. And you guys, it felt more like home than that cold, empty mansion I'd just left. The next few months were the hardest of my life. And also, the most beautiful. We had nothing. I had no access to my trust fund, my bank accounts were frozen. Victor was, as my parents knew, still looking for works. He was job hunting, he was coding day and night on his startup idea, he was pitching to anyone who would listen. He was getting rejection after rejection. We were living on instant noodles and his tiny savings. I was pregnant, I was sick in the mornings, and I was so scared. But we were together. We were a team. I started looking for a job, too. I got a job at a coffee shop, full circle, right? Folding clothes at a retail store. Me, Jen Adams. And you know what? I loved it. I loved earning my own money, even if it was just a little. I loved coming home to Victor, to our tiny apartment, and rubbing my growing belly. We were building a life. A real, honest-to-God life, from scratch. Then, about 2 months later, when I was starting to really show, everything changed. Victor had been working on this, one last-ditch effort. A big presentation for a group of venture capitalists. He'd been practicing for weeks. He went in that morning, in his one good suit. I prayed. He was gone all day. When he came home that night, opened the door. I looked at him, and his face was. I couldn't read it. I said, "Vic, are you okay? What happened?" He just stood there for a second. And then, this slow, huge smile spread across his face. He picked me up and spun me around, screaming, "They said yes. Jen, good job." He got the jackpot. His idea, his dream, the thing my parents thought was a joke, it was real. And it was happening. From that day, our lives, it was like a rocket ship. It was insane. Victor's company just exploded. His app was brilliant. Everyone wanted it. Within 6 months, he wasn't just not poor anymore. He was, well, let's just say he was giving my father a run for his money. It was crazy. And just as all this was happening, our beautiful baby boy was born. We named him Leo. He was perfect. We moved bigger apartment. Our mansion. On the water. It was bright, and full of windows, and full of love. And you guys, I've never been happier. My life was perfect. And right on cue, that's when my phone started ringing. My mother. My father's assistant. My aunts. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk to General again. Suddenly, they were so worried about me. Funny how that works, right? We ignored the calls for a while. But they were still my parents. And I had my son. I wanted him to know his grandparents. And honestly, I wanted them to see. I wanted them to see Victor. To see what he'd built. To see what they had thrown away. So, when my father himself finally called and invited us, including Victor and Leo, for a reconciliation dinner at the house, I said yes. We drove up to my old home. And this time, we weren't in a cab. We were in Victor's car, part of his convoy. When we pulled up, my parents were standing on the steps. Their faces, it was satisfaction. No, it was. I can't even describe it. Shock. Awe. We walked in. Victor, holding Leo, looking like he owned the place, because he could have. We sat down at that same, long, polished dining table. And it was quiet. Finally, my father cleared his throat. He looked at Victor, then at me. And he said, "We were wrong. I was wrong." My mother was actually crying. Real tears. We were so focused on the wrong things, she said, looking at Leo. "He's beautiful, General, you're so happy." They asked us for forgiveness. Right there. And I looked at Victor. He took my hand under the table and squeezed it. And I knew what I had to do. I forgave them. I did. Because holding onto that anger, it only hurt me. My new life, my real life, was too bright to have that shadow. But, and this is the part one really want to share with you guys, the real reason I'm telling this story. My parents, they learned a lesson. A very hard, very expensive lesson. And it's this: nobody knows tomorrow. You cannot, you should not, treat anyone as if they are less than. You cannot judge someone because their bank account today doesn't match yours. That person you look down on, that person you say is not your class, that person might have a fire in them, a brilliance you can't see. That person might be the one who builds an empire tomorrow. My parents threw me out for being with a poor man. And that poor man is now one of the most successful men in the country. And more importantly, he's the best man, and the best father, I have ever known. So please, especially to any parents watching, treat everyone with kindness. With respect. You never, ever know who you're talking to. You never know what tomorrow will bring. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more inspiring African tales. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me continue sharing stories that touch hearts and change lives. Until next time, remember, love, faith, and courage are the greatest treasures you can ever have. God bless you all. Bye.